Going live right now. I'm assuming anyway. So anyway, welcome to the Lovecraft eZine podcast, everybody. I'm coming at you from Alaska with the Aurora Borealis in the background there. My son's letting me use his green screen, so it's sort of a partial birthday present since I just turned 30 last week. So wow, no one's disagreeing with me. Okay, good. And now I turned 50. All right, so everybody watching, can you see us, hear us? I want to make sure all our recent bugs are worked out. Our guest today is Daniel Brom. Hey, Daniel, how are you?
Hey, how's it going, Mike?
No, not too bad.
Happy birthday, happy 30th.
Thank you. You're a good guest.
You look a day over 29 and a half.
Yeah, right. So anyway, I'm Mike Davis, Lovecraft eZine. Anybody else is coming late, so let's introduce Rick and Bridget and then talk to Daniel. So Bridget, why don't you go?
Hello, I'm Bridget. I'm a horror fan, composer, artist, person.
And your website for the stuff you create is
bridget-brenmark.com.
Yeah, BRENMARK, right?
Yes.
Okay, right. Rick.
I'm Rick Lay, writer and pulp magazine collector.
All right. I want to thank the Patreons. Got a couple of new ones this past week. Thank you very much. And speaking of patrons, I did a Patreon podcast with Kelly Young the other night. And we discussed the Stephen King multiverse. So that was pretty fun. That was interesting. Did you catch that, Bridget?
I did. Actually, it was really awesome because a lot of why I got into this Lovecraft eZine podcast to begin with, and now I'm lucky enough to be on it. But what got me into it a lot was you and Kelly talking about Stephen King.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So it was like, a throwback to listen to you guys talk again, and it was neat.
Oh, that's good. All right. So anyway, Daniel, you're the author of several collections. The newest is Underworld Dreams. Is that right?
That's right. That's the new one right there from Lev Press.
And then you have the Night Marchers and Other Strange Tales, right?
Yeah, that one just turned 5. Just turned 5 years old this month.
Now, is this the 5-year-old cover, or is this the original cover?
That is interestingly enough, that's the trade paperback cover. The book was originally a Cemetery Dance ebooks, but they decided they weren't. It was going to be so long since they were going to do the print copies. They let other companies do the prints. So the ebook and the trade paperback came out at the same time, but from different companies. So yeah, you do have the original trade cover right there.
Well, on the cover of the Night Marchers, we have a quote from Victor LaValle: "Storytelling that makes you laugh, cringe, and damn near weep. A big-hearted and wide-ranging book." So, really, we don't need to interview you now, because if Victor says it's good, then it's good, right?
Oh man, I'm so grateful for Victor LaValle, because he's such a talent and such a generous guy. Just really one of the greatest authors working today, and really grateful that he was able to read that book. I just love The Ballad of Black Tom and Victor's work so much.
Yeah, he really is a nice guy, and I haven't mentioned this on the show before. Well, first of all, he's going to be on the show later this year. I forget which date, but you can go to lovecraftezine.com and click on podcasts and look at the upcoming guests. Actually, next week we got Richard Chismar. He's got a new book coming out too.
Two people I'm incredibly grateful for. Richard, a real talent, and someone who's just done a real lot for horror and for new guys, gals in horror, and for people like me who are floating on the borderlands or the outskirts of horror. Like, Richard Chismar and Cemetery Dance really is responsible for me and a lot of other people being like, yeah, you don't fit here, you don't fit there, you're horror, you know.
Yeah.
And I credit
And weird fiction.
I credit Richard Chismar and Cemetery Dance for that unequivocally.
Well, anyway, I just pulled it up to remind myself. Let's see, October 3rd, Victor LaValle. So, and we got a great guest list for the rest of the year. The rest of the year is almost full. And then I remember the first time you contacted me, Daniel, I think the only way I had heard of you was through Ina Efras.
Oh yeah.
You know,
another writer that I absolutely possibly my favorite, quote unquote new. She's not going to be calling her new for long, but yeah, she's one of my absolute favorite writers. I was lucky enough to be in, I believe it was Night Script 3 with her first story, which went on to be reprinted in The Best Horror of the Year by Ellen Datlow. And at the time I was editing a project, and I was lucky enough to have the opportunity to work with Ina and get her second story for that project. And since then, I've read all her stories since. I think I've read some of her forthcoming work for some reviews that I don't think's out yet. She is tremendous. She is just a talent. So tremendous.
well, she is in the next book I was going to mention, and I'll come back to Victor. I have a little thing I want to say about Victor, but Spirits Unwrapped, which you edited.
Yeah. That's the story I was talking about. Yeah.
Yeah, and she's in this. And we've had her on the show, and I've mentioned this before, but for those who didn't hear it the first time several months ago, I can't remember ever reading a story first time that I've read a writer and going out loud, what the fuck? You know, it was just, I'm blanking on the name, but it's the one about the octopi. You remember that one? You're old like me. You're blanking too, right?
Well, I'm just not putting two and two together. Like people like, it's a story about fathers and sons. I'm like, what? Empire?
It's a heartwarming story where everyone learns a wonderful lesson about life, and there's a happy ending. Yeah.
Right.
So now it might have been one of the ones that she sent me and said, "Don't share this with anyone yet." I don't remember, but she's just a really good writer. You're right.
Yeah, she has a pair of stories coming out, and I don't know if these projects hit yet. Very prestigious book, I guess the Tartarus Press at 40 Strange Tales. She has a story in that is tremendous, and I think she's in a Swan River Press, both on the other side of the pond. She has a story in an anthology there that reviewing both of them that are just even by her high standards are great. And then she had one in Michael Kelly's the first issue of his Weird Horror, which is again just such a great story. And she's a natural. She's just I didn't catch her appearances, but when you hear her when she talks about her creative process, I mean, she's one of these people that just does it from the gut, does it from the heart, and is just talented enough to just make it happen. Like she's just like a modern day Robert Aikman, like without even trying, without even thinking about it, and it just makes it all the better.
Yeah, one of the things I like about you is your willingness not just to you don't have this tendency to just talk about yourself, but you talk about other writers and you promote other writers, and that's something that I appreciate and admire.
Oh, thank you. Well, I mean, I love it. I can't stop talking about it. I can't help it.
Well, it's not a zero-sum game, is it? You know, it's not. You know, we can promote other artists and creative types and podcasts, and you know, they can do the same for us. What I was going to say about Ina, first of all, just a tidbit. I've got a collection coming up, a real big collection from Michael Menace. If you don't know the name, he's been called the most underrated Lovecraftian writer ever. But he writes just some really weird stuff. And he wrote one of the scariest short stories I've ever read called Snuff Movie. So Bridget and Rick, I don't know if you got to that yet, but it's extremely creepy, and it's not what you would think it's about from the title. But anyway, Ina's daughter is doing the cover for that, so just wanted to give her a little shout out.
Oh, I think I saw that on social media a while back. It's ringing a bell.
Oh,
Fantastic.
did she say something about that? That's nice.
I don't know if she said, I'm putting two and two together. I think I remember seeing like, oh, my daughter got hired by, you know, a well-known publication that I'm
Some
like,
guy.
oh, okay. Right. Some 29-and-a-half-year-old.
I don't remember his name. And then Victor. Okay, so all of you out there who enjoy the show, enjoy the Lovecraft eZine projects, I can only do this because of the Patreons. Okay, I can't say that enough. It's annoying, I know, but it's also annoying when I turn on NPR and they're trying to keep their station running, but it's necessary. My point is, Victor Lavelle is a Patreon, and I'm not going to say what he gives every month, but he's not at the bottom level. But if you want to do the bottom level, you have access to all the Patreon podcasts, and it's only $5 a month. So you pay more than that at McDonald's. So typically, unless you get a drink, and then that's it. All right. So anyway, yeah, he said I just really enjoyed. He became a patron, and I thanked him. This is like 9 or 10 months back. And he goes, "Well, I listen to the show all the time, so I figured I better, keep it going." So that was nice.
I love listening to Victor speak. He's one of those people where when you hear him speak, you're immediately 33% smarter. Like, I mean, and that's not a lot to go for
at
me,
least
because I'm on the bottom, man. I really need that 33%. But seriously, like, he's another natural. It's just such a natural, brilliant guy that he. I really learned so much just in his analysis of things and hearing him speak. I had a chance to host him at the Lovecraft bar, which no longer exists in New York City.
Yeah, that's too bad.
Back in 2015 or 2016 already, when Ballad of Black Tom came out. And dear God, it's fascinating hearing that man speak about Lovecraft, speak about his relationship to the work of Lovecraft, and just he had some of the students there. Just hearing him talk about writing. I mean, if you could ever catch him speak, like coming up on your show, I'm going to be tuning in. You said NPR. I believe around that time he gave a very similar talk on NPR. I'm not a member. I don't know the archives, but if you can
he's been on NPR once or twice.
It's absolutely brilliant. Victor, I mean, he doesn't even need to say that, but this guy is brilliant.
Well, he'll be on October the 3rd. And did I say this already? When you first contacted me, I saw the blurb from Victor, and I'm like, okay, yeah, send me the books, but I'm automatically going to book you, because if Victor says he likes your writing, then we should have you on the show. So,
thank you so much. Thank you again, Victor, and thank you, Mike.
Yeah, glad you're here. All right, what started your writing odyssey, and how long have you been writing?
Well, on this particular odyssey, maybe it's coming up on about 20 years. Maybe I started getting serious about writing maybe in the year 2002 was when I took a workshop, and when I said, what's it going to take to get real or get serious about writing? So it's been a long road and a slow boat, but that's the beginning of it.
Well, I find it interesting why do different people do creative things? Writing is creative. Bridget does some really cool creative things, which
thank you.
This is one right here. If you can see it on the screen, it's a little music box with tentacles and an eyeball and everything.
Oh, cool.
And yeah, she does sorts of things like that. So, but my point is, it's interesting. Why did you want to be a writer?
I get, in a way, I was always a writer and I was always a storyteller. It's kind of boring to say like, oh, I was always a writer, I was always a storyteller. I'd always been a musician and a songwriter, and I'm always, writing poems or things with friends and collaborating. So that's why I said that particular Odyssey. At a certain point though, I had never really been trained or never thought to take the creativity, which was always a part of me, to say, okay, what is it going to take it into a different level where, right, I could publish or reach other people with it, and right. So those are two different two different parts of the why we write, or maybe clipping where does the beginning of this particular story start.
Yeah. What I usually ask this at the end, but I feel like now's the time to ask it. What for you is success as a writer? Like I think some people might say, they look at Stephen King, arguably the most successful writer in the history of the English language. Okay, so they have that in mind, especially young people, young writers, they might have that in mind. But and money is always nice, of course, but what defines success for you as a writer?
I think it's a great question. I'm glad you asked it. It's something I've been taught. It's something that's always close to my mind because like you, I'm fascinated by what makes people creative, what do people think is creativity. And lately I've been talking to some new writers who are just starting out. They're not published yet, or they're starting in their publications. And in framing the conversation and trying to help them along the road, that's the first question I ask, if not that directly. It's like, what if you're lucky enough to know what you want and have your eye on what you want, or think about the different things that you might want, I think it can really help. I think it could really help. It could help avoid a lot of the pitfalls. It could help a lot of the beating yourself up or handling some of the stuff that comes from the world, right? Like, I mean, there are some people out there, like, they're going to define their writing, and there's no shade on any of this. Okay, I'm a writer. I'm a professional writer. I take a gig. I'm only going to write this Voltron comic, and you've hired me to write the Voltron adaptation, and I got paid, and I'm writing it. And that's a form of creativity, but it's maybe on the scale, all the way on one scale to the commercial. And then you could slide that scale if you take, okay, so I have a day job, and like when I was 17 or 18 years old, or maybe a little older than that, and I was floundering around, what am I going to do with my life? I made a decision, or maybe I gave into fear, or I had a realization that, what, I just didn't, either I didn't believe in myself, or I didn't want my creativity to be tied to my dinner. And that has nothing to say with anyone. And that's not even limiting. I mean, maybe back then it was a limiting thing, but for me, I had the freedom of sort of the William Carlos Williams school. I mean, William Carlos Williams was a poet, and he was a surgeon. He was a doctor, and he was a surgeon, and that's how he was able to live his life, and that gave him the freedom to, he could be a poet and write whatever he wanted.
I mean, think about all the famous poets like Yeats. Correct me if I'm wrong, but Yeats didn't earn his living from poetry. Frost was lucky enough to be able to do so, right? But it's not a common thing. But yet we look back at them, we don't think of their day job. We think of what they wrote, what they passed on to us.
Yeah. So everyone has like there have been different benchmarks for success in the course of my career. I mean, I didn't even know if I was good enough, or good enough's the wrong word, if people would ever want to publish me. So when I published my first short story, which was back in 2004, it was a webzine called the 40 Bureau. It's a short story about a Yeti, and that was like, this was the hugest thing for me. I mean, it still is the hugest thing for me. But right, so you're published. I mean, one of the definitions for success that I have is to be able to continue to being published and part of a community, and to have there be a market, be it big, be it small, be it medium, to where I can still be a voice, to be a part of all this exciting stuff that I freaking love to death. And it's a thrill. Every single sale, every single time have a project or a sale or a part of a project, I feel successful.
Yeah, I think one of Stephen King's most underrated books is Doom McKee. And
Yeah.
If you remember, the elderly lady asks the protagonist if he's just become an artist, a painter and penciler and so forth, and she says to him, do you believe in art for art's sake? And he said, yes. I would have to say yes. And I don't even remember exactly what she said, but she's like, right answer, I agree with that. Obviously somebody wants to hand you wheelbarrows full of money on top of that, that's great too, but
Yeah, I think
so
that's sort of the paradox of it all. As to, I feel like when artists or when people are connected to that arts for art's sake thing is where they really pave their own voice and they pave their own ground. And I think when the people who do that ultimately wind up being successful, right? But it's just like, how do you tap into that place? And right, and then there's a whole other a whole other part of being an artist is like, how do you manage the mundane stuff that just absolutely like has to be managed, right? Like, how do you be a rock band that isn't taking advantage of it? How do you deal with rejection? How do you deal with contracts? How do you deal with the projects? It's a full-time job, and enough to make you go mad just on that, and enough it can be an off-ramp for anyone to not want to engage.
The Cloud Atlas book, there's a quote, and I just looked it up again so I could quote it correctly, touches on this, and he's talking about creating music. And I think before that he was talking about the fact that no matter what you do, at some point in history, anything you do is going to be forgotten, whether that's 5 years from now or 50,000 years from now, so there's a certain amount of time after you die, if you create, that your creations last. But the quote is this, and I really liked it. He says, one writes music because winter is eternal, and because if one didn't, the wolves and blizzards will be at one's throat all the sooner. So yeah. All right, so let's talk about the stories in Underworld Dreams, because I think they're really hard to categorize, and I think that's a good thing. I mean, it's weird. I would call it weird fiction. You can disagree. You're the writer, but
I'm happy to be in the weird fiction umbrella, even though
or dark fiction too.
Yeah, I'm eternally a student of learning about the genres and the genre types. I am really happy that Underworld Dreams and my fiction isn't an easy categorization. So, right, for the purposes of not being that guy who's just like, oh, I don't know. The really short answer, if I have one sentence to tell people, I'll say, the closest thing is they're going to give you that feeling of kind of the old Twilight Zone television shows, and that's when I first started writing, I was doing that unintentionally. I just was writing to please myself, and that's what was coming out. And as I grew as a writer and grew as a fan and grew about it and learned a lot about things, I started to pick that up as a skill, as a piece of craft, and wanted to do that intentionally. So Underworld Dreams, what sets Underworld Dreams apart from my other collections and my other work is on most of the stories in that book, I went in, whatever the story was about, I wanted to heighten up the tension between the psychological and the supernatural. So in one way or another, in each of the stories in Underworld Dreams is intentionally ambiguous. Me trying to channel the school of the strange tale, right? Like, it's not, I call them strange tales not because they're strange in the common sense of the word, strange tales as in, I'm trying to write in the school of Robert Aikman and Shirley Jackson and really have like, wait a minute, I felt something from that story, but I can't tell you the name of what happened. I can't tell you if that was in that protagonist's head. I can't tell you if that was a ghost or a robot or whatever it was that happened.
That is exactly the kind of story that I personally like. I love it in short fiction and novels, in movies and TV. There's a way to do it wrong, obviously.
Sure.
Where you just the writer doesn't know what happens, so
Yeah.
but so I want to read
And
a little bit.
It's hard to
Yeah,
stick
go
the
ahead.
landing. Hard to stick the landing on that, right? Like for each reader will say it worked or it didn't work for me. That's both the joy and the danger of writing that kind of stuff, right? Like did you manage to do it for a particular reader? And it's not always going to be a yes.
Yeah, well, first of all, let me see if I have the right book here. Is it the Night Marchers that Nicholas Kaufman introduces? Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So first of all, if you ignore, I'd like to say to the audience, if you ignore everything else you say here, you really should pick up these books because they're the kind of things that we talk about: weird fiction, dark fiction. Like I said, you can't really put it more succinctly than say Victor Lavelle. Guys like Victor Lavelle and Nicholas Kaufman love the stories, and others. You mentioned the Twilight Zone, and maybe I'm reaching a little bit. There's a lot of sci-fi in the old Twilight Zone, but I also feel like there's a lot of weird fiction aspect to it, you know. So I hear what you're saying when you feel like you were writing in that vein. So
Yeah, it might be it might just be a common, I even often question, well, is it a good similarity once you dive into it? But it's a good I think it's a good introduction to say that horror has such a wonderful umbrella. It's a good first thing to start. Okay, we're going to be we're talking about this part of the map.
right.
We can split hairs, keep splitting hairs and down the road, but that's the first step I'd like you to think of if you're going to think about my work.
Yeah, and you don't have to define it down to the letter and parse it, because that becomes unenjoyable.
Yeah.
But just to say, it's dark fiction, it's weird fiction, it's under that umbrella. There's a lot of ambiguity to it. That appeals to me. I think it appeals to a lot of, Lovecraftian fiction, I think, is under the umbrella of weird fiction, for example. There's on Goodreads, you've got some great reviews, and I want to read just part of one to kind of give people the sense of the type of stories that you write. And this is in regards to Underworld Dreams.
Oh, cool.
He gives you, I think it's 4 stars. He says, "This is one of the hardest reviews I've ever written. Some of that is the intention of the author. The foreword talks about stories that are ambiguous, stories that leave a lot open to interpretation." Skipping ahead, if you read just for story, I'm not sure this is for you. Bear with me. I think you might be turned off. I read it closely, and what I found was that I spent more time thinking about it than I did actually reading it. I would finish a paragraph and sit there and realize that I hadn't moved on to the next paragraph because I was still thinking about the previous. I think that's a huge compliment, that kind of review. So
I was really grateful. I'm not connected on Goodreads, but I think I recall that review. I think that was from Tor Nightfire. I think it was part of someone parsed it there from the Tor Nightfire review. I remember, and yeah, it's fascinating. I just was, I don't know if I was saying it to myself or to someone, like, one of the things that I'm really grateful about Underworld Dreams is, first of all, I'm grateful that it means something to people, and I'm just fascinated how it means something different. No 2 reviews are alike. Like
yeah.
people are seeing these really thought-provoking or interesting things in them. Like that's great that because story look, I love story and I love genre, and a lot of genre has to be beginning, a middle, and an end. And but maybe one of the hallmarks of weird fiction or other kinds of fiction are stories that are structurally different. And because of those structural differences, you still has to feel satisfying, but it's not going to feel satisfying in that same way of like there was a climax and a resolution. If you're playing with some of these elements, I feel it leaves, as the author, you're able to start a conversation with the reader, or I hate being hammered over the head with something, even if it's something I agree with and love. I
Right. Me
love
too.
I love it, right? Like so often when part of my process is when I'm like, oh, I wanted this to be a story and I want the reader to feel this, um, I'll really back away from that and think of different approaches. So thanks for reading that, Mike.
Yeah, no problem. I just think it gives people a good sense of, besides Victor, and I keep mentioning these two guys saying, read Daniel Rahm, but besides that, here are people leaving reviews on Goodreads, and this gives you a good sense of what kind of writing, what kind of stories these are. You know what? Some of your writing really reminds me, and I've mentioned this story so often on the show before, of story that H.P. Lovecraft wrote with R.H. Barlow called The Night Ocean. I don't know if you've read that, Daniel, but if you haven't picked that up, I mean, well, you can read it for free online. I think actually a few years ago, I put it on the Lovecraft eZine website, so you could read it there. But nothing really happens, but it's a brilliant story. But yet some things do happen, and it's very hard to explain. This artist, he's been working really hard on some kind of portrait or everything. He's mentally and physically exhausted himself. So apparently this guy has the means to go take a vacation for a month or two, and he goes to this place called Elston Beach in Florida, right on the beach. And this is, I think, in the 30s. And he rents this one-room house that's about a mile away from the village. And then these really atmospheric things start happening on his walks. And he gets the sense that there's this whole world behind the world, is the best way I can say it, out there, but never can actually tell what it is. And he actually says this right at the beginning of the story too, that he says, when I try to put this into words, it's like when you wake up from a dream and it sort of flies away from you. Yeah, better phrased, of course.
I have reread it, but I think I need to reread it with my eyes now. Like I think I reread it probably before I even knew what weird fiction and strange tales were. I'm really looking forward to rereading it. You made me think of have you ever read The Wine Dark Sea by Robert Aikman?
Yeah.
The way you described it is how I feel. I'm like, it's a long story. It's incredibly engaging to me, but what is it happening and what's going on? Like I can't tell you. I can't tell you. And not like a writer who was flailing. Like right, either people do this with incredible intention or control. Like Kelly Link is a sort of author where I've listened to her. She tends to write with incredible intention. And then you have authors maybe like Tanith Lee or Robert Aikman where I think they come up with the same brilliant results, but they're doing it with their gut. They're not thinking it or even overthinking it at all.
Yeah.
And I have a feeling Ina Efros might be one of those writers as well, where she is just doing it out of pure talent and instinct as well.
Well, if I can do my part to promote her name, I want to do that because I really like the way she writes. Before I continue, Rick, Bridget, do you guys have any questions for Daniel, or do you want me to keep blathering away?
Sure. So in your introduction to Underworld Dreams, Daniel, you talk a little bit about as above, so below, and how that relates to Underworld. I was wondering if you could share that a little bit more.
Wait a minute. More importantly, what's that on your t-shirt?
Oh, this is the Thing t-shirt, of course.
Nice.
Awesome. Oh yeah, so that's the actual design here.
Oh, sweet.
Yeah.
Nice. All right. Yeah.
So yeah, as above, so below.
Oh wow. Yeah, I think I was trying to write an introduction, and yeah, trying to give a framework. I think I don't remember I don't remember exactly what I said in the introduction, but what I think of when I think of as above, what is it again? As above,
As above, so below. Yeah.
It's sort of a Kabbalistic notion, and I don't know a lot about mysticism or occultism or the Kabbalah, which is, I guess, the Jewish tradition of mysticism. But what that particular phrase was saying, what I think what Judaism differs from a lot of different other mystic or religions or other traditions, is that it doesn't. Unless I'm probably going to bungle this because I don't know my religions, but it doesn't have an afterlife, right? Like the highest spiritual goal of Judaism isn't to really reach a heaven. And I think the Kabbalist tradition is saying, well, so the highest spiritual purpose is not going to be in the next life. The highest spiritual purpose is to live your life now, is your feet on the ground now. So like whatever you're doing, whether you're Stephen King, you're busy being a media mogul, or if you are the guy working in the deli, or if you are, the guy driving the tractor or building a house or publishing a thing, the highest spiritual goals or the highest spiritual lessons, or all of them, is found in that world below. It's not, you're not going to reach it in the heavens. Like the highest spiritual thing, I have in my life is, to live my life, with honesty and engage in it, and all the lessons, all the spirituality is going to be there. So I think I may have referenced in the introduction that maybe the humanistic part of the story is just one part of my feeling about story is, why once I learned about weird fiction and strange tales, it was so freeing, because it's like, oh, wait a minute, if this story is not about a vampire, or even if it is about a vampire, it doesn't have to be about the rules of, okay, all we need is a cross and sunlight and we can slay the vampire. So even if we're fighting a vampire and it's about a strange monster or a strange occurrence, the real story, or the real push of the story, is going to be these underworlds. It's going to be these worlds, what it means to be living on Earth. And I don't know, maybe it's starting to get convoluted or overthinking it, but
no, I don't think
I think that's what I meant in the introduction.
Bridget, is that movie good? Because I assume it's good, because
Which
I
movie?
haven't. As Above, So Below.
Oh, I liked that movie. Yeah.
Oh, is there a movie called that?
There it is. It is an interesting movie. And it references a little bit of what you're talking about, of like, our current existence. You have the potential of, like you were saying, high spiritual achievement, or that means that you can have hell on earth too. I think you said that in your introduction. Possibility of hell on earth as well. And I thought that was really interesting, because then when you're writing, it seems like that would be very freeing to think anything is possible.
And those are the things that scare me the most. I mean, a writer who I greatly admire and who I've read only a tiny bit of it, because I'm not sure if I could curse on here, but it'll F me up.
You can curse.
It fucks me up, man, is Jack Ketchum. That's the sort of shit that I was fortunate enough late in his life to become friends with him. And I confessed to him, I'm like, Dallas, I have not read a single word of your stuff. And he was like, why? What are you talking about? I'm like, because I know it's gonna I'm not gonna be okay with it, and it's like that real look, monsters and all that stuff scares me, but what really scares me, man, is what people do to other people, or what we can, those hells we can unleash on ourselves, is the stuff. And that's what really scares me, and that's where I'm really interested in reading that, and I hope I can deliver some of that on a good day.
It's like you don't have nightmares about monsters, you have nightmares about serial killers.
Right.
Yes.
Oh, not even serial killers, man. Just like people.
But that's my nightmare world. If I have a werewolf or a vampire, I know it's a dream.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when I say I'm going to have fun here.
You were talking about Twilight Zone.
But if it's an evil human,
yeah,
who's a sociopath,
yeah,
then it scares the hell out of me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and like you said, hell on earth. There's been plenty of hells on earth. You know, think about Nazi Germany and the concentration camps, and that's just one example. If that's not hell, then what is? You know.
Or the 30 Years' War, if we want to go before that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Those are all sorts of wars and plagues in history.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So you emailed me, Daniel, and you said you wanted to say something about how to stay afloat when drowning. That was in.
That was in Underworld Dreams. That's the
Right,
opening in Underworld Dreams. I'll show off my skills of pronunciation because I can't pronounce the original appearance. Is it Pareidolia from Black Shuck Books is where it was originally printed in a British anthology in 2019. What's the definition of that? The psychological experience of seeing faces or seeing something where there isn't one.
Oh yeah.
That was what the editor was looking for. And I happen to be working on a story that may or may not have been about a guy who is seeing sharks or seeing like sharks on land, you know. So I'm like, maybe the editor will take that one. So that was that story was reprinted the first time I ever appeared in Ellen Datlow book, in Ellen Datlow's Best Horror of the Year 12. So it was a big deal for me, big excitement.
Yeah, and I don't remember anything in that story where a shark is knocking on the door.
He says
land shark.
Candygram.
Candygram.
And then everyone runs away, and that's kind of the thing of the story. Yeah, I think they adapted it for Saturday Night Live back in.
Oh, that's great. Before you wrote it.
Yeah. Time travel. This is the way you do time travel, Mike. This is the way we do it.
All right, and then you emailed me something else. You said, I have an announcement. I have not told anyone. I have permission to mention it for the first time.
Oh my God, I'm so excited that I can mention it on the show.
Me too. I don't know what it is yet.
Yeah. Candygram, right? Let down. Now
you're gonna be on Saturday Night Live.
Yes. I'm gonna do bad Saturday Night Live jokes on your serious show. It's the announcement. No, but
serious.
What's that?
You thought this was a serious show?
Jokes on you.
You've been watching the wrong show, Daniel.
No, so yeah, I'm really excited to say that I've sold my first novel to Steve Berman at Lev Press.
Awesome.
Yeah, I'm really excited about that. And this is the first time I think I've mentioned it to one or two people, and this is the announcement. Yeah, it's called Servant of the Eighth Wind is the name of it. And it's going to be out next year.
That's a great title.
Next year. Thank you.
Not even knowing what it's about. That's the kind of title that would make me pause in a bookstore or a virtual bookstore online and go, ooh, that's a good title. I better check this out.
Oh,
that's wind as in wind from the air. WIND.
That is the spelling of the word, but yeah, I mean,
it might mean something else.
I mean, it means there's a lot of meaning to that word, I hope. But yeah, I won't say too much about it. But what I will say about the book is that there are characters from my short stories who are in the book, and the two particular stories. In The Night Marchers, there's a story called Across the Darien Gap, which was my first story to appear in Cemetery Dance. And there's a character in there who's not I wouldn't call him an occult detective, but maybe that's the box that
sure
people talk about, occult detectives. So it's that character from across the Darien Gap from the Night Marchers, and we see him again in Underworld Dreams in the short story Between Our Earth and Their Moon. He's in that story too. So this novel is a long story that possibly connects the dots or references some of the things in there. And yeah, I'm really excited that it's going to be out.
I'm sure you know this, but and Rick really loves this kind of stuff. So does Pete. Pete's not here today, but fans really love it. Readers really love it when like they've read a character in a short story and then they appear somewhere else, or a facet of it appears somewhere else.
Are you creating a literary universe?
What's that?
It's creating a universe.
Yes.
A literary universe.
The Daniel Brom universe.
Help us.
Is it okay if you give us a short synopsis and then tell us when the book will be out?
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, the book is going to be out, and we'll get that exact information as it comes. But it's going to be a full year. It's not coming out till next summer of 2022. But the book is about there's this. He's not a supernatural detective. He's more of a supernatural misfit detective. His name is Nathan Ben-Gurion, and in the short story Across the Darien Gap, he's on a mission. He's on a mission to just protect this young woman who has something to do with this whole supernatural mafia of New York, and it just gets really fucked up. I mean, things go wrong. He's just put on this mission just because everyone else is dead, or he's just thrown into it over his head. And that short story is just this guy's greatest tragedy. And so the novel maybe starts a little before or picking up on that, and really takes on it's a huge cat and mouse ride from New York into Central America, and it really deals with a lot of Central America and folklore and places. I love setting, so we really get to dive into some of the dark aspects of these settings and this character. So,
I love when settings are almost another character in the story, like the desert story. Pardon me, I'm blanking on the name. In one of your collections.
Oh, okay, yeah, I think there's one called The Moon and the Mesa that was set.
That's it, yeah.
In the desert.
Yeah.
I love, one of my favorite writers is Lucius Shepard. Since I was a young teen, that's what got me excited about writing, is the feeling of right, like there's so many different things we love about reading, and one of them is when you feel like you were there. And Lucius Shepard he did a lot more, but that was one of the things that he did for me. So yeah, some people don't like that. There's the risk of the prose being too purple, or people feeling that the prose is purple. But for me, I love it when it hits that spot where that setting is completely distinct. And yeah, like you said, it's a character. And to the point when I talk about my writing, I feel like I feel successful when my characters are born out of the setting, when they're characters that their conflicts or what they're experiencing has something directly to do with, or even better, can only be an aspect of that setting.
Oh, hey, just one second, Rick, and I'm sorry. I just want to say, Ina is watching, and she says, "Congratulations on your coming novel, Daniel." So.
Oh, hey, Ina.
So anyway, I'm sorry, Rick.
We were talking about you, Ina. I hope you heard.
If she didn't, she can play it back later.
Since you mentioned Central America, is your novel getting into Mayan and Aztec folklore?
Not Aztec, but maybe maybe there's an element of Mayan that could come into play, or or if it's not directly mine, maybe it's yeah, the maybe, or the people's relationship to it, or maybe if it's not actual Mayan, it's maybe what people might be thinking or of Mayan, or what people living there now are experiencing. There's an element of that. Yeah, I mean, it's something that's on my mind when I think about that part of the world, for sure.
I've got kind of a sensitive question to ask and want your take on it, because I see sort of this sometimes on social media, this attitude of, if you're not of a certain culture, you're not allowed to write about the culture or set a story in the culture. My personal feeling is that if you're respectful of that culture, then it's pretty boring it's pretty boring if you only write about your background, your setting, right? I mean, you can do that, but so what's your take on that?
Yeah, like I'm that's a sensitive topic, and
it is, yeah.
I'll dive into that anytime. I mean, the first thing I'll say is I'll just, right, the golden rule is always going to apply, even just in talking about it, which is respect. And, I get the sense, we're thinking about it from a respectful place. And, man, maybe it's because I'm like a Libra, or I'm of two minds of it. There's definitely a part of me that feels the same way you do, which is like, yeah, as long as you're being respectful, anything goes. And then there's the other part of me. It also depends on like who's saying it. Like, is it a critic in the New York Times who says, yeah, okay, Stephen King, you are a white guy from Maine, so you cannot write about this culture. You just cannot.
Don't write about Native Americans or
right,
whatever.
You are appropriating it. And hey, look, yeah, we could talk about if people have what is respect and what isn't all day long. I'm fine with having that conversation. I guess the line for me is, if a culture or someone in that culture specifically says that's our story, and we and don't do it. And I can't think of a time where that's happened. I can't think of a time when I was in Australia, and I was in Australia as a tourist, and I didn't know anything about anything. But when I was out there, I learned that, yeah, like, not only do the Aboriginal people, they don't want you here. And it's not like here in Australia, but that's a sacred site. Like, you're not supposed to be here. And okay, and all right, we can't get rid of you. So if you're gonna be here, don't take a picture of it. You're not even supposed to look at it. So I'm like, like, that's a grounds of, if I can make it apply to my fiction, I'll apply to that too. Because I'm like, okay, I don't care if I traveled halfway around the world to come there. Learning that, I'm like, that's fine, man. I'm gone. I'll go back on the bus. I don't want to be trampling on something like that, because
know what? It makes me think of your Moon and the Mesa story once again, where they're like, if anybody bothers you, tell them Mr. Yillig, I think it's Yillig, said it's okay for you to be here. Something like that. The characters.
Yeah, nice. Man, nice grab on that line there. I forgot his name. But yeah, like, when I look back at some of the places where I've written about cultures, I mean, a lot of the times it is from the outsider's point of view. Like, it is outsiders coming into it, and at least I can say that's I'm giving an honest story. I'm not doing a Mary Sue, and I'm not putting myself in there, but as much of myself that is in these characters, a lot of the times it is, a white man. Sometimes it's a man, sometimes it's a woman, but it's coming from the perspective of an outsider. And that is all. I'm not saying you can't write it from a perspective of someone else, because that's the great thing about Lucius Shepard. One of the things I love to do is collect original appearances of, like, my favorite short stories. And some of my favorites are like The Jaguar Hunter by Lucius Shepard, and the Quintana Roo stories by James Tiptree Jr. Now, if you look, those stories came out in the early 1980s. The introduction, like, the Tiptree story was set in Mexico, And God damn it, the introduction to that story is like, wow, you just realize how backwards 1983 was. Like, calling the Yucatan and the people who live there savages, literally in the magazine of fantasy and science fiction. But Lucius Shepard wrote the story, one of his first stories and my favorite. He wrote the story from a native person. He's a jaguar hunter living in the Yucatan in Honduras around that time. And I don't think that was really ever done. I can't say I know if it was ever done before, but it certainly wasn't common. And it certainly was never done with the compassion. And I'm going to say dignity, but I'm only saying dignity in the fact of just the absolute excellence of Lucius Shepard's prose, and just the portrayal of a person, of a native person, a person of color, written by a white man. But it's not about that story.
And it's also you can make it very simplistic too. Like, there are plenty of men who write stories with female protagonists, and there are plenty of them that do it wrong.
Yeah.
And then there are some that do it right. But I just don't think you can say, okay, you're a white woman, don't write about white men. You're a white man, don't write about, black women.
Yeah.
Don't do this, don't do that. I really think that no matter what you do, you are going to upset somebody. But I think what we're talking about is so important that if the story is approached with, I like your words, compassion and dignity, not condescending, realizing that they are just as their culture is just absolutely as valid as your culture, and so
yeah, maybe the answer to that is like some sort of honesty. And what I mean by that is, I guess, Lucius Shepard, yeah, he lived down in Central America a lot. And while The Jaguar Hunter is it's not a story about culture or identity in any ways, he just gets it so right that, like, if you don't know the name Lucius Shepard, you're like, he just gets it right, man.
Yeah.
And it's just a beautiful story about a beautiful supernatural experience that happens to be about, a person of color. The identity doesn't very much play into there. And
I think the other thing you can do as an artist of any sort is, before sending that art, that writing, that novel, that story, that painting, whatever it is, out into the world. Here's an obvious example. If I was going to write a Native American short story, I'm friends with Stephen Graham Jones. I'd sure as hell be sending it to him to see what he thought, if he was willing.
That's a great idea.
I want to be respectful, and I think a lot of writers do, but then some writers get it wrong, and that's not good. So anyway, I don't want to belabor the point on that, but Bridget and Rick, do you guys have any comments on this?
I would just say that there's a difference between appropriating and just being inspired by something. And a lot of times people assume when they read or see or witness a piece of art, but up until the times where we had the internet, artists traveled all over the world and experienced different cultures, and they would return to their home country and they would write music or write stories or create something inspired on their travels. And I think there's a lot to be said from that's how we learned about the world before the internet. And now that the internet is so prevalent, it can be easy to think that just, you don't need to write about that, we can find about it from somewhere else. But I don't think there's anything wrong with being inspired by something. I think that's a compliment. But yes, there are definitely people out there who do it wrong because they just are capitalizing on something or vilifying something.
Bridget, and I also think that when it comes to stories, unlike movies and television and so forth, when it comes to novels and novellas and short fiction, if you're reading about a protagonist in another culture and it's done right, you are inside the mind of that protagonist, and you may be entertained by the story, but you're also, if it's done right, of course, assuming it's done right, you're also learning about what it is like to be a person in that culture, instead of only knowing what it's like to be a person in your culture, which is not good. You know, it's not good at all.
Yeah, I think that's why it can be so hard, because you're giving someone thoughts in a story.
Yeah.
And so are you giving them the appropriate thoughts? You know,
Right.
Now I'm getting totally worried, because now, like I said that I'd never done that before, but I'm thinking back, like the title story of The Night Marchers and Other Strange Tales, the title story, The Night Marchers, is the protagonist is a native Hawaiian man who has renounced his United States citizenship. So it's a very political.
I didn't say it to worry you, and from everything I've read of yours, that it's very respectful and respectfully done. You know, but I do think it's an important conversation to have. You know?
Yeah, I mean, I would revisit now and look back and see, like, okay, I know what my intention was in putting The Night Marchers out there. So I guess I'm glad I haven't had complaints yet.
I think the problem comes when people refuse to see that that nuance exists, that it's either all the way this way or all the way that way. But that's just not true with most things. Yes, with some things, but you know. So anyway, I don't want to belabor the point. I question to ask you, because I saw this in another interview. Do you personally believe in the supernatural?
Yeah, I do.
Okay.
Maybe if you knew me, I may have said no in other like today I do. You might, but I don't.
Tomorrow I don't.
Yeah, ask me again in the second hour. I may have a different answer for you. I do tend to believe in the supernatural. I tend to be more of the Dana Scully first, you know, like, but you know, like I'm so much more fascinated in the supernatural and the debunk, both in terms of entertainment and also like in terms of what I've experienced in my life. But you know, I just turned 50 years old as well, and
oh, you did. Congratulations.
Yeah, so,
what do you mean as well? I'm not following.
As well. I know, because for the other people.
Other people in the world have turned 50. Yeah, recently. Can you guys hear Daniel? I think I just lost him.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, your volume went down.
Yeah, your volume went way down.
Oh, how about now? Maybe I lean back.
No. Maybe the computer didn't like what you were saying.
Yeah.
I don't know. We had a bit of a problem with the test too. Maybe just move a little bit closer to the mic and see what happens.
Okay. How about now? You guys hearing me a little bit better?
No, I'm sorry. I don't know what's going on there. I just wanted to make sure it wasn't me. All right. Well, okay. Let's play it this way then. If you want to continue to work on it, we can talk about some other topics, and you stick around, and we'll see if your volume comes back. I hope it does. Let's see here. Okay, did you guys? Let me ask you this first. Rick and Bridget, I need some horror movie recommendations. What horror movies have you seen lately, and what are some good ones and not so good ones?
Yeah, I've seen a lot of not so good ones. I'm trying to help you, but I'm not sure it can be super helpful.
I haven't seen any really recently made horror movies.
Yeah, I've I mean, I've been watching a lot of older movies. I recently watched Angel Heart on Pete's suggestion. So like,
oh yeah. For the first time or rewatched it?
Yeah, I had never seen it before. So
that's a really kind of a mind fuck, isn't it?
Yes. That was cool. I liked it though.
It's based on a book called Falling Angel, which is just as good as the movie.
I watched, this is not horror, but it's, I don't know, psychological suspense. The Woman in the Window. You were asking me about that, Bridget.
Yeah.
Watched that with
I
Danielle.
don't know if you liked it.
Well,
Is this the Edward G. Robinson movie?
I don't know, but it's on Netflix. It's brand new. It came out on
It's
Friday.
brand new. Okay, it's not.
Yeah. No, not Edward. Yeah.
Anyway, it was a
it-
Fritz Lang movie with the same name.
It's got some great actors in it. Amy Adams, I like her a lot. Gary Oldman. Can't think of the others, but several other big names in there. But ultimately, it kind of disappointed me and Danielle as well. And I think really the only thing that saves it is that Amy Adams is a terrific actress. Otherwise,
it horror or mystery.
It was sort of a psychological mystery.
Yeah, there was a movie that Fritz Lang made, which is about a college professor meeting a woman who he sees in a window. She draws him into a film noir murder mystery.
Oh, well, this was sort of a Rear Window type thing, but with more twists and turns. I'll put it that way. Do I think it's worth a watch? Yes, but if Amy Adams wasn't in it, I'd say it's pretty mediocre. She elevates it a bit. So anyway, all right, Rick, you wanted to say something about The Prisoner, I think.
And there was a good article by Conda Laughter on The Prisoner. I view it from 2 points of view. It was raising a question whether Chagas influenced a sort of monster on the Prisoner TV show called Rover. And I think they had nothing to do with the presentation of Rover. But Rover, which is it originally when they made the show, was supposed to be a robot machine that there was this prison for ex-spies, and this robotic creature would capture you. But the whole machine was supposed to travel in water, and it broke down when they tried to use it in water. So they made a weather balloon. The great scientific advance, they had this crazy weather balloon type creature that seemed to be created from water, which would smother people and knock them out. And for a cheaply made prop, they did it very well. And if you look at it, what the article does very well, it raises the question, was Rover supposed to be some sort of living creature that was actually created by these scientists? Sort of a biological life form.
I love it.
And there is even a scene in an episode called Free for All, where some people seem to be worshiping these Rover creatures.
Hey guys, do you hear me now? I think Mike might be back.
Yes, we can hear you now.
That's great, Daniel. I'm glad you fixed it.
Okay.
So just to finish, the article is more interesting in how it discusses the evolution of Rover than Lovecraftian parallels.
Well, Hector Plasmic says no, Rover was influenced by lava lamps. So
that's probably true too.
Yeah, it probably is.
Is that a movie or a series?
Series.
It was a series made in the 60s. It starred Patrick McGowan.
Oh, okay.
All right, so Hippocampus Press, I just want to make everyone aware. I'm trying to remember when it comes out. Oh, June 2021. So we're getting there. It's called Under Twin Suns, Alternate Histories of the Yellow Sign. Obviously, we lost a dear friend last year, Joe Pulver, and he was Mr. King in Yellow, as anyone who's watched the show knows. He liked Lovecraft, he liked weird fiction, but he really, really liked Robert W. Chambers and the Yellow Sign and so forth, and Carcosa and you name it. Anyway, this is called Under Twin Suns, Alternate Histories of the Yellow Sign. There's a lot of great names in here, and including Joe. Yes, a previously unpublished Joe Pulver novella.
It's one of
So,
his best King in Yellow stories.
oh, have you read that one? I
I
haven't read that one. So, oh, that's right. They sent me the digital arcs, and I sent them to you guys. I just haven't had a chance to
Yeah.
read them yet.
I haven't read them all, but I broke Joe's rule of it's the last story in the anthology, and I can see why. But I said, you
Feels
know,
like read them in order, damn it.
somebody's going to mention it ahead of me, so I'm going to, you know. I tried. I said it's going to take me a couple of weeks to read all these in order.
Oh God! As an editor, he was so adamant that, you know, it was an art the order that you put the stories in an anthology, and you damn well better read them in order. So,
I read John Langan's story, which is also great, before Joe's. So that's the most they're going to get out of me.
So anyway, guys, look for that at Hippocampus Press in June 2021. And I just think I'm so glad that Derek Hesse with Hippocampus Press is doing this. It's edited by James Chambers. Thank you to James too. Gonna have James on the show on August the 1st to talk about this. So the book will be out by then. People can read it. I don't know. Previously unpublished novella by Joe. It's worth it, the purchase price right there. So anyway, I wanted to mention it, and will again.
And John's story is an excellent tribute to Joe.
Really?
Yes.
I knew I liked that guy. But anyway, let's see here. Now, okay, so a couple of fans who've been watching and or listening to the show for a long time have some questions for us. I hope I say your name right, Mr. Adams. Nathaniel Adams. He sent me a PDF. He wrote some, if I understand it right, he wrote another article, and this was just part of it. Did you guys have a chance to look at that? The 10 Lovecraftian movies?
Yes.
Okay. So his number 10 is Reanimator. Number 9 is Necronomicon, which...
that's the one I would take exception to.
Would you?
It's got some good things in it, but it wouldn't be on my top 10 list.
I mean, if you're watching, yeah, everyone's going to have a different top 10 list for sure. So, you know, Nathaniel's just as valid as anybody else. If, for those who don't know, Lovecraft eZine website, we've got a big list of Lovecraftian movies there. So, sorry, Rick, you were going to say something?
What I was going to say, I mean, that's the only one I think I sort of felt shouldn't be on the top 10 list.
Okay.
Everything else, his choices were excellent.
Number 8, The Dunwich Horror. Now, my list, which is really big, and I take advice from a lot of people over the years, I include cosmic horror, Lovecraftian horror. I personally don't include the campy stuff. Okay, so yeah, I know The Dunwich Horror 1970 is a Lovecraftian movie, but it's not on my list at the Lovecraft eZine website.
I wouldn't call that campy, though. It does have an excellent movie score. I can see why he could put it there. It's not like the remake is campy. The other movie that had the same actor who played Wilbur Whaley playing the Armitage.
Number 7, I like that he included this. Number 7, Phantoms, 1998. And he writes, this film doesn't get anywhere near the amount of love that it deserves. Written by horror author Dean Koontz and starring Ben Affleck, Rose McGowan, Peter O'Toole, of all people. It utilizes a lot of Lovecraftian imagery, I can't talk today, and story elements. You know, I think that's on my list too. I have to agree with that one. What do you guys think? So,
I mean, it's Dean Koontz's most Lovecraftian story too. So
yeah, all I want to do is go to Blockbuster or Family Video and browse for about 45 minutes and then find a copy of Phantoms and come home and watch it. But
Is Blockbuster still around?
no,
There's-
that's my whole
There
point.
There's one.
Yeah.
Is there
Oregon.
one left in Alaska, right?
Oregon.
But you know,
Oregon.
this is so great that you can immediately get all these movies, right? You know, I'm not saying it's not great because it is, but I miss going to the video store. You know, imagine it's a Friday evening, you know, and everybody's milling around the video store. Everybody's glad it's the weekend, and you know, you're nodding to people that you've seen in the video store before. And then, you know, of course, there's always the new movies. You don't ever have to worry about not being able to watch a new movie anymore because there's plenty of virtual copies on the shelf, right? But back then, if you didn't get one of the 10 new blockbuster movies, man, you were out of luck till it came back. And I even missed that. So I don't know. I'm talking like an old man that I had to go to the video store and in the cold 3 miles. I had to walk backwards too because the wind was blowing the other way.
Like a 29-and-a-half-year-old there, Mike.
I did just turn 50 on the 11th. Do you mind me asking when your birthday is, Daniel?
It's October, early October.
Oh, so you
Not the 6th.
Not the 6th, not the 6th.
That's my birthday.
Ah,
Oh, so you're actually almost 51.
I guess maybe I've
No, you're
fallen over
halfway.
that hill, which I guess also means it's only 6 more months to Halloween. So I guess that's okay, man.
That's true.
I like that.
I could not agree more with Nathaniel. And please, I hope I'm saying your name right. Number 6, AM 1200. Now, I remember we talked about this movie on the show years and years ago, Rick, when you first started, and it was hard to get. You had to buy a DVD directly from the director. But he put it on YouTube in the last year or two. So if you go to YouTube and search for AM 1200, it's a 40-minute movie, I believe, and it is utterly fantastic. So, and it's got a lot of elements I personally like. Daniel, if you haven't seen it, this guy's driving through the desert at night, and he hears this weird, stuff on I got to rewatch it. It's been a few years on an AM radio station, and that's all I'll say. But
I just wrote it down to get on my growing list of things to search up after the show.
yeah, that's one of my biggest faux complaints. Everyone's TBR and watch lists go up when they listen to the show.
If that's a complaint, then
It's not a real complaint. Yeah.
And reading list.
yeah.
Yes. Number 5, From Beyond. Rick, what do you think?
That's one of I love From Beyond.
Okay.
I thought that was done well.
Bridget, Daniel, any comments on that one?
Super creepy and classic.
All right.
Yeah, it's one of the ones I've seen. Like it.
Based on a story which isn't that great anyway.
Number 4, The Void, which I have not seen. Kelly Young told me not to see it because it's got a lot of body horror in it, and I'm not into body horror at all.
It's
That come out like 4 or 5 years ago, relatively recently.
Bridget, your cat looks very wise.
Yeah, it seems to be about 5 years old.
We actually had the guys on the show like 6 months before it came out.
Oh,
And then I never watched it when I found out.
I started to watch it. It looked interesting, but I guess
I've seen it.
I wasn't in the hospital mood that day, I guess.
Yeah, it's incredibly well done. It is pretty gory, but with the practical effects and things, it's definitely Lovecraftian, and the whole, when you finally find out the motivations of the main character, not the main per se, but the main villain, I should say. Yes, it's about as Lovecraftian as you can get. I mean, it is pretty brutal. You you definitely have to embrace the gore and the body horror if you're gonna watch that one.
No, I'm not then. I don't think anyone could disagree with number 3, The Call of Cthulhu by the H.P. Lovecraft Historical Society.
Yes.
Silent film, great film. They've gone on to do The Whisperer in Darkness, and they have a lot of audio dramas for anyone out there who are not who's not aware. They've got great audio dramas. Number 2, The Color Out of Space. Do you guys like the color? This is the Richard Stanley one, right? Color Out of Space or Die Farb? Which one do you like better?
Die Farb is better.
Die Farb?
100% Die Farb is way better.
Okay. I've not seen The Color Out of Space. And then when I heard about Richard Stanley, I deliberately did not see The Color Out of Space again. So.
It's not a bad movie. It's just not as good as Die Farb.
Yeah.
Okay. Someone explain better than I can to the audience what Die Farb is. It's a German movie, right?
It's a German version of Color Out of Space set in Germany, like right. I think it's right after. It's after the. It's part of it set after the end of World War II.
It's very well done, and the way that they handle the color out of space is done very well too.
Because
it's done in black and white.
Mm-hmm.
And then the only color is the color out of space. This was like a neon pinkish purpley color, which really stands out against the black and white. It's very artistic. And
number 1, Nathaniel's number 1 is Dagon. So I don't know if that'd be my number 1, but it's definitely on my list for sure. And then honorable mentions, he's got Sacrifice, which is really recent. Cthulhu, about the professor returning to a small hometown. Wounds, which is a film on Hulu based on Nathan Ballingren's story.
That is a super creepy movie.
Yeah, and a super creepy story. Yellow Brick Road. That's a really good movie that creeped me out. And then his last honorable mention is Absentia, which, if I take exception to your list at all, Nathaniel, it needs to be somewhere in the top 10. Damn it!
Yeah, we will all agree with that.
I'm just kidding. This is a great list, and I wanted. He wanted to know what I thought about it, and I said, I think I said, what? Why don't see what everybody thinks about it? So, all right. A longtime listener by the name of John Paul says, I could not answer this at all. Just curious, what are your top 10 and current, which is in caps, all caps, what are your top 10 current favorite TV shows? Was only asking because I've often heard you guys discuss various TV shows on your podcast, such as the OA, etc. And as a fan of the podcast for the past 5 years now, your recommendations carry weight with me. I assume they're talking about Bridget and Rick there, but
I don't think I watched 10 shows on TV these days.
Much less current, right?
Yeah.
But name a few currents. Like you're watching Shadow and Bone, right, Bridget?
I watched the first season of that. Yes, I really liked it. It's definitely fantasy, post steampunk kind of high fantasy. But what I thought was interesting about that one is the Russian influence, because a lot of time, steampunk is set in either Victorian England or Victorian America. So I thought the Russian influence, just the world building overall of that show is really, really cool. I got the books so I can read the trilogy and see what that's all about. But I enjoyed it. It's definitely based on, like a young adult story, but I don't think that it was any less creepy or interesting because of that.
Resident Alien on Sci-Fi is very good. That's good comedic science fiction.
I love that so much.
I don't know if this counts. Well, this isn't current, but Danielle decided to go through all 13 million seasons of Grey's Anatomy lately. And so, I'm sort of in the room while she's doing this. And I feel like I need a flow chart to keep up with all the affairs and romances on that show.
So non-genre shows okay if they're current in this?
Yeah, whatever. What are you watching? That's whatever
It was
whatever you
not
want.
genre.
Doesn't matter.
I think it's called Yellow. Is it called Yellowstone? It's like the Kevin Costner Western.
That sounds right. I haven't seen it, but that sounds
Yeah,
right.
I don't know a lot about Westerns, but like for some reason, like I think it's like 3 seasons. It kept me interested.
Wait a minute, Westerns. Didn't you just finish watching The Mandalorian, Rick?
Ah, The Mandalorian.
Well, everybody loves the
Space
Mandalorian.
Western.
With the exception of Mike.
I don't like The Mandalorian because I'm what?
But let's go into some non-genre shows. It's got a season coming up. I don't know when it's going to hit, but if you want a gangster drama, Peaky Blinders on Netflix is excellent. I've seen, I think, 5 seasons of it.
Yeah, I've heard of it. Haven't seen it.
It is just one of the best gangster dramas I've ever seen. It takes a lot of liberties with history. Right now, they're dealing with a fascist leader who bears resemblance to somebody I won't mention who's alive these days. But that fascist did exist. Oswald Mosley did exist.
Well,
All right.
Current, but currently streaming.
Isn't everything?
I've been watching the Dresden Files on Amazon Prime.
Oh, you know what? That's interesting because it only lasted 10 episodes, and I love the Dresden Files TV show, and I can't stand the books. I tried several times, but I love the Dresden Files TV show.
I can see why. I've listened to the audiobook of the first couple books, which is narrated by James Marsden.
Yeah, I was just gonna say you just love James Marsden. That's all it is.
Well,
I'm just giving you a hard
I
time.
watched him with Buffy too. But
Everybody likes Spike.
He's just great as Dresden, but I can see, like, knowing the plots of the first couple books and then watching the plots of the TV shows that don't really much to the plots of the books, but yeah, I mean, how to explain, like, the books, are so much more kind of the slower noir machismo kind of stuff, and the show takes the edge off of some of that, I guess, but in a good way.
Plus, who's the name of the ghost? I forget. In the books, he's just in a skull.
Oh, Bob. Yes.
Bob. Yes. In the show, he's kind of a ghost-like guy.
Yeah.
And they can interact and so forth. And he's not, from what I've read in the books, the total dweeb that he is in the books. So.
Yeah, he has a little more character because in the book it's just a floating skull talking to you. So you imagine, something like very out of a Vincent Price movie. Dresden, Harry. Harry.
I just found my new gift for the show.
I'm in a new show with my hand puppet.
Well, if you want to watch something good that's animated, I recommend The Invincibles on Amazon Prime. But it is R-rated violence, just to be aware of that. It's the most violent cartoon I've ever seen. When somebody gets killed on that, they get killed.
Speaking of, have you guys watched Jupiter's Legacy? That's a new superhero show.
Yes, I enjoyed it.
Daniel, what did you think?
I wanted to like it, but I just didn't. I didn't connect to it. I
can understand that.
I do like superhero. I do like the superhero genre, and I like the dark and the deconstructed, but I just I can't quite figure out why I didn't. This one just
maybe it took too long to explain their origins.
I don't know.
That was a long arc.
I might have to rewatch it. Like maybe it was just me. Like I should.
I see reviews split right down the middle, Daniel, and then some of them say I haven't seen it. Some of them say that story just kind of stops or something.
Yeah, I like the comic. That's why I was kind of interested. I don't know. Maybe I hate to say it. Like maybe maybe there's just something about the production or the production value that just wasn't pleasing to me. I don't know. Like who knows why sometimes you get thrown out of things, but I don't know.
One weird vibe I got from it, comparing it to Lovecraft Country, seems to be that Lovecraft had a lot of African American readers in the 20s. If you base it on the 2 TV shows, because the black member of the superhero team knows of Lovecraft in 1931, I guess, is when it's taking place. They go on that voyage.
All right, so take this with a grain of salt, but Kelly emailed and he said, I just watched the Jinn, DJINN, and loved the hell out of it. A young boy trapped overnight in a house with a supernatural enemy. Very little dialogue, really amazing filmmaking.
I saw the trailer for that. It looked good.
Okay. And then I can't believe I'm going to actually read this one. He says, and Great White was a surprisingly solid Australian shark horror. I won't be watching that one, Kelly. Sorry. He says they're both brand new. And then he says the new season of Love, Death, Robots is decent, especially the Christmas episode. I don't know what Love, Death, Robots is. So.
Sort of a computer animated series.
Yeah. Sort of like a heavy
Anthology.
metal wannabe on Netflix. Lots of little short animated things.
There's a couple of movies that I'm really looking forward to. Have you guys seen the trailers for these? The Green Knight?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Oh man. Yeah. Did you see that trailer? That is just fantastic. I think it just came out. The trailer, I mean.
Yeah, I think it was due to hit pre-pandemic, and they may have just like re-upped it. From A24 Studios, if I'm not mistaken.
And I think it's June or something. Comes out in June or something.
Can't wait.
Yeah. And then I saw a trailer. Let me pull this up here so I get the name right. The Deep House. Submerged YouTubers in underwater horror, which almost turned me off. But then I saw the photos from this, and it looks like it could turn out to be good. So
didn't see it.
And then the last one that I did see the trailer for is called Queen of Spades. And first thing I thought of was, oh, this is a kind of a Bloody Mary thing. And even in the trailer, one of the characters says, yeah, it's sort of like Bloody Mary, except you do this. You put a card, from a deck of cards, the Queen of Spades on the mirror, and then you draw a square in red lipstick on the mirror. And then, you say something 3 times or whatever. And I thought, okay, whatever, I've seen this before. And then I saw the trailer and I'm like, wow, this might actually be good. So anyway, anything else we want to talk about, guys?
Let's see. I did see All Things Heard and Seen that came out recently based on the novel. And it was a decent watch. It has kind of a What Lies Beneath flavor to it, I guess.
Oh, really?
But I really thought the acting was really good, and the story overall was good. I think I haven't read the book, but it seemed like they translated it from, you know what I mean, when a movie just has that literary feel to it, and you can tell that they took things to account for the book, but I can't completely speak about how well they covered it from the book. But I thought it was a pretty good watch. It wasn't earth-shattering, but I think the acting and the storytelling, it was a good watch.
I'm sorry, what was the title again?
All Things Heard and Seen. It has
Amanda Seyfried?
Yes, Amanda Seyfried, and one of the guys that was on it is also in The Nevers.
That was a good movie. It's the one I'm thinking of.
Has anybody tried to watch The Nevers? I couldn't get into it. It seemed too much X-Men and Victorian times.
Oh, no, okay, it's not the one I'm thinking of then.
I watched the first couple episodes. It was interesting, but I'm curious about the characters, but there isn't anything that's really compelling me. Like, oh, I want to know what's going on there. It's just kind of fun-ish.
Well,
Yeah, I guess.
Curious.
no matter what kind of story it is, first and foremost, right? You got to care what happens to the characters, or you're not interested in the story.
Yeah, I think the main character is almost too reserved and too cold. So part of you wants to know, well, what is her story? Why is she that way? But a couple episodes in, they haven't really. I don't know. They haven't. You know what I mean? Like they haven't talked. They haven't touched on it enough to where it's like, oh, okay, that's her story, and there's depth to it. It's just
she's sort of a female Professor X to a degree. He's basically the champion for good, the mutant champion, and you got a sort of female serial killer who seems to be the Magneto of the story. And
so we were starting to talk before the show started. We were starting to talk a little bit about the movies Tenet and the movies Synchronic, and I said let's talk about it on air for a minute. You want to start with Tenet? Anyone?
Well, unlike some people, I liked it. I said it was a good update on classic Ian Fleming tropes.
Unlike some people.
Better than they did about. I liked the whole Kenneth Branagh character. I thought they borrowed very well from a James Bond story called The Hill of Rarity.
I like the ending a bit where one friendship, from the standpoint of one character, the friendship is ending, and from the standpoint of another character, the friendship is more or less beginning. But I've only watched it once, so.
If you watch, I'll just say this: whether you like it or not, you're going to be totally confused by it the first time you watch it.
I would agree with that, yeah. And that's from the director. Sorry,
Nolan?
Christopher Nolan,
yeah. Director of Inception and the Batman.
Yeah, Inception. Yeah, I liked Inception a lot. So.
Well, I got a good. I'm after watching this, I got a good feel for having Robert Pattinson play Bruce Wayne, since he does a very good acting job in Tenet.
And then Synchronic. Now this is from the guys who did The Endless, and I forget the name of the other movie. The Endless was wonderful. And then Synchronic stars Anthony Mackie, and The Endless is cosmic horror. And so I was hoping for more of that, but it turns out, I'll try not to spoil anything for anyone who hasn't seen it, but maybe don't see it, because it's just this, and I love time travel, but this is just this sort of simplistic time travel story, and that's it. I mean, feel free to disagree, anybody listening, but I mean, that's just what I think. And I got like 3 shelves over here of time travel books, so I love time travel, and I didn't like the movie. So, did you guys like it? Did you guys see it?
I haven't seen it.
I thought I was kind of where you were at, I guess. Like it was an okay watch, but I wouldn't necessarily watch it again. It turned more into adventure than, if you could even call it that.
Yeah.
Than anything creepy or yeah.
Well, last thing I got for those who missed it is I wrote a short article a couple of months ago for the Lovecraft eZine website about 3 short stories: Gotcha by Ray Bradbury, Occultation by Laird Barron, and The Bedroom Light by Jeffrey Ford. So let me just read this. So you're in bed with your significant other, someone you care for very much. Scary? Most likely not. But Ray Bradbury, Laird Barron, and Jeffrey Ford take this ordinary scenario and create something truly horrifying. these are 3 of the creepiest stories I've ever read. If there are other stories with this setting, more or less, I don't know about them. They're probably out there. Then I wrote, I don't want to give too much away, but consider the following quotes. This has got to be Ray Bradbury's scariest story, and I love Ray Bradbury. From Ray Bradbury's story, Gotcha. I'll just read a couple paragraphs. They were incredibly in love. They said it. They knew it. They lived it. When they weren't staring at each other, they were hugging. When they weren't hugging, they were kissing. When they weren't kissing, they were a dozen scrambled eggs in bed. When they were finished with the amazing omelet, they went back to staring and making noises. Ray Bradbury describing sex in the cleanest way possible. Later in the story, and then something happened. At breakfast, about 1 year into the conniption fits, Beth said, half under her breath, "Gotcha." He looked up and said, "What?" "Gotcha," she said, "a game. You've never played Gotcha?" Still later. So they play the game. And she disappears in the room. I don't want to give it away, but I'll just read this last paragraph. And the face peering down at him, so full of evil glee, so brimful of malevolence, so beyond this world and in another, so alien, so strange, so never seen before, that he had to shriek again. And the thing that horrifies me about this story is you got these 2 people that he dresses it up as they're both normal people. And then she says, let's play this game called Gotcha. And all of a sudden, it's the worst thing ever. And it, he's almost, I don't want to point everything to H.P. Lovecraft, but that last paragraph could easily be in a Lovecraftian story. And then same with Laird Barron's occultation. They're in a hotel room. He was studying the shadow again. That thing does resemble an insect, the shadow on the wall. Thought it had wings earlier, but I don't know. Can't see shit in here. Wait a minute. It's a water stain. Later. The night remained preternaturally quiet there on the edge of the highway, absent the burr of distant engines or blatting horns, or the stark sweep of rushing headlights. The world had descended into a primeval well while she'd been partying in their motel room. It had slipped backward, and now the desert truly was an ancient and haunted place. And last but not least, I'm reading all these to encourage the listeners and watchers to please check these 3 stories out without giving too much away. And from Jeffrey Ford's The Bedroom Light, they kissed and then lay quiet, both listening to the sound of the leaves blowing outside. She began to doze off, but before her eyes closed all the way, she said, "Who's getting the light?" "You," said Bill. "Come on," she said, "I've got an early shift tomorrow." "Come on? I've gotten the damn light every night for the past 2 weeks." "That's because it's your job," she said. "Fuck that," he said, but started to get up. Just then, the light went out. So that's all I'll say. If you go to the Lovecraft eZine website, there's a search bar at the top right. Just type in Gotcha or something if you can't find the article. And I do link the stories to the collections that they're in. And actually, the Ray Bradbury collection that it's in is currently on Kindle Unlimited. So it's 100 Ray Bradbury stories. I think that's the title.
Mm.
So anyway, please read Daniel Brahm. He's a really great writer, great editor. Spirits Unwrapped is the book that he edited, and read his book, his collection Underworld Dreams, his collection The Night Marchers, and Other Strange Tales. And check out the stories I just mentioned. And Daniel, you want to say anything else before we say goodnight?
Oh yeah, you mentioned Jeff Ford.
Yes.
He's got a new collection coming out pretty soon. It's called Big Dark Hole. It's coming out July 6th from Small Beer Press. I think you guys have had Jeff on the show. I'm a big Jeff Ford fan.
Twice. He's a great guy.
Yeah, I know I definitely heard one of those. Jet. If you love Jeff Ford, the title story, it's Big Dark Hole was one of my most recent favorite short stories. I'm reading an arc right now for review. It's fantastic. Big Dark Hole by Jeff Ford.
He just seems kind of humble, like he almost doesn't know how immensely talented that he is, you know?
Oh yeah, yeah. He's got just he's one hell of a talent. Got such a great voice, and he loves to blur the line between like putting himself in the stories. Like has that meta aspect. Is like really
Yeah.
pretty cool. Pretty cool. Yeah, I guess coming up for me, June 10th. Doing a group reading with some cool authors. Um, John Paget. I think Ina's in the mix. I'm doing bunch of authors. Joe Kaplan, Emma Gibbon Shaw. So June 10th.
Oh, she's great.
Yeah. So you can find that on my website or my social media or my YouTube page is Daniel Brom. That's coming up. So
What's your
oh,
website address?
Blood and Stardust .wordpress. I don't even know my
And
website. Yeah.
your Twitter handle, I think, is just your name, right? Daniel Brom.
Yeah. The YouTube is you can look on YouTube, look up Daniel Brom. And then July 15th, Jeff Ford is going to be in the mix, along with Mike Allen, Gwendolyn Keist, Laurel Hightower, doing a couple of group readings.
Oh, did you
So,
read Laurel Hightower's latest book?
is it Crossroads?
Yes.
Great book.
Yeah. Are you a parent?
I am not a parent.
Well, it's a gut punch probably either way, but
Yeah.
especially if you're a parent. Oh
Yeah.
my God.
No, she's a great writer.
And
Absolutely
especially,
great writer.
I mean, especially at the whole book, but then right at the end, you're like, oh my God, you know? So
Yeah, excited to hear her read her and have her read with us. So looking forward to it.
you mentioned Jeff being very meta. Like I said, Richard Chismar is going to be on the show next week. Speaking of meta, you know, the name of his upcoming book is Chasing the Boogeyman. And I just love this. In the summer of 1988, the mutilated bodies of several missing girls began to turn up in a small Maryland town. The grisly evidence leads police to the terrifying assumption that a serial killer is on the loose in the quiet suburb. But soon a rumor begins to spread that the evil stalking local teens is not entirely human. Law enforcement, as well as members of the FBI, are certain that the killer is a living, breathing madman and he's playing games with them. For a once peaceful community trapped in the depths of paranoia and suspicion, it feels like a nightmare that will never end. Here's the part I really love. Not that this in itself wouldn't be a great story. So to continue the synopsis, I'm reading from Amazon.com. It comes out this summer, a couple months. Recent college grad, this is in 88. Recent college graduate Richard Chismar returns to his hometown just as a curfew is enacted and a neighborhood watch is formed. In the midst of preparing for his wedding and embarking on a writing career, he soon finds himself thrust into the real-life horror story. Inspired by the terrifying events, Richard writes a personal account of the serial killer's reign of terror, unaware that these events will continue to haunt him for years to come. So they're sending me an arc of this. I think it's at the post office. I can pick it up tomorrow. I can't wait to talk to him about this because, you know, anyway, when you said meta, made me think of that.
Yeah, it sounds great.
Yeah. So anyway, anything else before we go, guys? Like I said, Richard Chismar next week, and then the week after that, the long-suffering Bo Johnson. And if you guys are familiar, just go to lovecraftezine.com, click on the podcast on the top left, and you'll see the guests. Like I said, a couple of neat things coming up, as well as all the great guests that are coming up this year. On June 13th, Trevor Henderson and Jed Shepard will both be on the show. Trevor Henderson is a really, really spooky artist that has recently just really blown up in popularity. for good reason. And he's a great guy. I've had him on the show before. He's going to be on the show. He's doing some sort of game that I don't understand with Jed Shepard, who is the director of Host, which I'm sure you guys have all seen. So Trevor was already on the show, and I emailed Jed and I said, hey, and I CC'd Trevor and I said, hey, if it's cool with Trevor, why don't you come on the same show too and talk about this? And they're like, both, yeah, this is a great idea. So, and then on June 20th, I'm going to have a very easy day because Christopher Buhlman, the Lesser Dead author, we interviewed him recently, interviews John Horner Jacobs. So he mentioned how much of a John Horner Jacobs fan he is. And I said, well, I've been on the show a couple times. And he goes, yeah, I'd love to talk to him. I'm like, well, why don't you interview him on my show? And he goes, okay. John thought it was a great idea too. So anyway, we got a lot of fun stuff coming. And thanks for watching the show. Someone named Charles just became a Patreon during the show. Charles, thank you. And that is a very generous amount of money. Thank you for keeping me in business, and I really appreciate it. Thanks to all the rest of the Patreons. Rick, Bridget, thanks for being here, guys. Daniel, great to see you again, buddy.
Great seeing you. Great seeing everyone. Thanks for having me back.
Yeah.
Really appreciate it. Good time.
Yeah, please continue to keep me posted about projects that you have coming out.
Will do. Thank you so much.
Last thing I want to say about you is just to reiterate that I really admire the way that your attitude, that it's not all about you, that you want to promote other writers and creators, and that's something that I personally appreciate about you. So thanks.
Thank you so much.
All right, thanks everybody. Thanks everyone who watched live and later, and I'll have the audio up within a few days for those of you who want to listen on iTunes and so forth. And we will see everybody next week with Richard Chismar. Thanks a lot. Have a good night.
Bye.